Well, good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, whatever your current life situation is. Hello, YouTube. This is Jeffrey Kite back again with another episode of Kites Curiosities. Well, history tells us that on April the 13th, 1865, the Civil War came to an end when General Robert E. Lee surrendered to General Grant, Ulysses S. Grant, at Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia. And it just kind of ends there. We don't really expound on it too much. But what if I told you there's more to that story? There was actually a whole nother month of conflict and turmoil in our country after that date. And we're going to explore that a little bit today. Y'all come along with me. Today, I am standing in front of the entrance to the Jefferson Davis Memorial Historic Site here in Irwin County, Georgia. The map shows that this place, the nearest city, is my hometown of Fitzgerald, Georgia. But it is mostly closest to a little unincorporated area in Irwin County called Irwinville. And it was here on the morning of May the 10th, 1865, that, in my opinion, the Civil War truly came to an end. As we all know, most of the time your conflicts never end until the head of the organization, the head of the group, the main guy in charge, the main puppet master pulling the strings, so to speak, is caught, captured, arrested, and taken into custody. And this beautiful place is where that all happened. And I'm going to take you on that journey. So, if we go back in time to April the 2nd of 1865, that is the date in which Jefferson Davis fled from Richmond, Virginia, which was the home of the Confederacy. He left. The war was not going in a very positive way for the Confederates. The war effort was collapsing, and he could feel it just collapsing all around him. So he moved the capital from Richmond all the way to Danville, Virginia. And so he's trying to regroup there, and they set up government there, and they ran the Confederacy for about a week in Danville until April the 10th, when they just decided to cut loose and just get on out of there permanently. So April the 10th is when Jefferson Davis decided, okay, I'm gonna have to make a run for it. So he came out of Danville, Virginia, and I got my notes here. Came on down to Greensboro, North Carolina, down to Charlotte, North Carolina, crossed on into South Carolina at Fort Mill, South Carolina, came down to York. After York, came down to Abbeville, South Carolina, then on into Washington, South Carolina, and it was on April the 13th, 1865, he was informed of the surrender. So about 3 days after he left Danville, Virginia, he was informed of the surrender at Appomattox Courthouse. And then 5 days after that, on April the 18th, he was informed of President Lincoln's assassination. So he was on the run, definitely on the run. He knew the Union troops were going to come after him, and they already were in hot pursuit of him. And it was May the 3rd, 1865, he finally crossed the Savannah River from South Carolina on into Georgia. And his main objective was to try to get to Mississippi, try to get to the western side of Mississippi, regroup the Confederate Army, and make another go at it. That was his plan. So he was coming down coming down and around to try to avoid all of the Union troops who had made their way into Georgia and had set up in the areas of the Civil War and were, you know, had control of all the landing area. So he was trying to get to Mississippi. He kept going. He went on into Washington, Georgia, went on into Sandersville, Georgia, and finally, on May the 9th, made his way here. It was in the evening of May the 9th, made his way here to Irwinville in Irwin County, Georgia. So if you can imagine the morning of May the 10th, because remember they got here May the 9th, set up camp, spent the night out here. The morning of May the 10th, I believe history records that it was kind of rainy out here. It was kind of rainy, misty rain. And they were all camped out here. Davis and his party, a lot of his cabinet members had kind of left him. They scattered out and about. They were going to regroup later. They were all camped out here. They had some weapons. They had some supplies and some things. They were traveling. And early morning hours, the 1st Cavalry, or 1st Wisconsin Cavalry, and the 4th Michigan Cavalry converged on Davis and his party right out here in this area. Now, as you could imagine, in pre-dawn hours, it's hard to see. And this was a very kind of densely thick, kind of foresty area. It was a pine forest, a pine farm, pine tree farm. And couldn't really tell who was who. And so a small skirmish broke out, and the Wisconsin and Michigan troops began firing on each other. I believe the Michigan folks came from one direction, and the Wisconsin folks, I believe, came from another direction. I may have that flip-flopped. I'm going to confirm that here in a moment. And just all chaos just broke out. And Jefferson Davis said, I got to make a run for it. And he ran right through those woods right there. So I'm on one of the walking trails here at this beautiful and peaceful state park. When I was growing up, this was one of my favorite places to visit. I loved history, loved learning about the Civil War, and I've walked this trail many times and have spent hours in these woods. It's just always been a fascination of mine to walk the ground, to stand in the areas of where such key moments of our nation's history happened. And I wonder who else came through here, who else ran, maybe not necessarily this trail, but this area. Here's a creek. We're going to come back to this here in a minute. Very interesting part of today's story. But just a beautiful little walking trail here. As you come down the nature trail, you'll come to the spot right in here. A little memorial where it memorializes two brave soldiers, John Rupert and John Hines of the 4th Michigan Cavalry Union Army. They were killed here on this very spot by the Wisconsin, 1st Wisconsin Cavalry. So as far as I can tell, as far as I know, the Michigan Cavalry did come in this way and was pushing back here, and the Wisconsin came in from the road where the entrance of the road was and was pushing in here. And so when they converged, they thought, well, the Michigan guys were the Confederates shooting back at them this way. So these two gentlemen, if you want to visit their graves, they are at the National Cemetery in Andersonville, where the Prisoner of War Museum and the Andersonville Prison of War for Union soldiers is located. I visited that place last year. Check that video out. It's a great video. Wonderful place to visit if you get a chance to go. And if you want to, go to graves 13696 and 13697 to pay your respects to these two men who died here in Irwinville. As you follow the nature trail around, you find your way back to the creek that we just crossed earlier. And the name of this creek is called Factory Creek. Now, Factory Creek, it runs a pretty good ways. It feeds into several bodies of water, and has a pretty good length of flow here. But this little creek here cuts all the way through the state park. And we had a big rain last night here in the area, and I believe this is the most water I've seen in this creek in a long time. But the reason why I stopped here, not just to film this little creek here and a little running water, this is where our story gets kind of weird. And you have to make up your mind which version of the story you want to believe. So I've already told you about how right up through here, this is where the camp was. Michigan was coming this way, Wisconsin was coming this way. They converged on Jefferson Davis in the camp, and Jefferson Davis made a run for it to this creek right here. I don't know if this is the very spot that he ran to. It could have been back over here somewhere. It could have been back up where the two soldiers were killed by friendly fire. That part I do not know, and I don't know if history records the exact spot along this creek that he was captured. So just kind of use your imagination. That he ran from right through here up into this area, into this creek somewhere. And remember, I told you it was kind of a rainy morning, May 10th, 1865. And he ran in here and he hid. He hid along this creek bed. But not for long. The two soldiers from the Michigan Cavalry, 4th Michigan Cavalry, they found him and located him. But they found him in a very peculiar state, because Jefferson Davis was wearing his wife's cloak and his wife's shawl. And so upon finding him dressed in such a manner, they asked him, "What are you doing? Are you," as the story goes, "what are you doing? Did you think you were going to escape us by dressing up like a woman?" He said, "No, no, 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 no. It was raining, and I needed some dry clothes to, you kind of warm myself and shield myself from the rain, and these were the only dry garments that we had." So that's where the story, the weird part of our story, starts. And it doesn't end there. So I'm leaving the creek area. As you leave the creek area, continue the bridge. And when I was a kid, back there, it was just a big giant log that laid across the creek bed. And man, we had so much fun crossing that log and trying to see, people I'd come out here with who could stay on that log and not fall in the creek. Thankfully, I never did. I think a couple of people did, which is how come they put this bridge here. They've had this bridge here for a little while. But you come out away from the creek and back into the park area. And again, just use your imagination. The Michigan soldiers have taken him, one on one side, one on the other. Take him, escort him out of the woods, and bring him to that place right there that we're about to go visit. And so the two Michigan soldiers brought him here to this very spot. And it was right here on May 10th, 1865. President Jefferson Davis was made a prisoner of war by federal troops and was arrested, tried for treason, and was held in custody for 2 years, I believe it was. And here's the monument commemorating that action. Now I want to give you guys a close-up of this sculpture right here. We've got President Davis right up there, Jefferson Davis. And then we've got this right here, this depiction. Here are the two soldiers. Brought him out of the woods. As you can see, he's in a cloak. He's wrapped up as if to stay warm. And remember, he is brought to this spot in his wife's cloak and shawl. And boy, what a heyday the Union soldiers were having with that. And they began to talk amongst themselves, and the news of Jefferson Davis's capture began to spread. That finally the Civil War was officially over. In my eyes, when you capture the main man in charge. But yeah, the word spread about, oh, he was in women's clothes. And then, oh, the rumors and the embellishments began. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. So when Jefferson Davis was captured, he had on the overcoat and the shawl that was his wife's clothing, and he's being escorted back up through central Georgia, I believe, and on up over and into Virginia. And the word got out, word began to spread. And the northern newspapers, in an effort to, further humiliate him, drew pictures and ran pictures in the papers of Jefferson Davis dressed in a bonnet, a big hoop skirt, really, obvious women's clothing that was, of the time period. And that simply wasn't quite true. He wasn't in a hoop skirt. He wasn't in a big frilly gown. It was just his wife's overcoat and the shawl. But that little bit of story, that little bit of truth mushroomed into this huge yellow press campaign to really stick it to him. And he got aggravated with it. And he denied it and said, no, that's not what it was. That's not what happened. That's not it at all. I just merely had this in an effort to stay dry. It was raining that day. So that's the big controversy of this whole story. So I'm gonna leave it in your hands. What do you think? Was Jefferson Davis a cowardly leader who dressed in his wife's clothes in an effort to save himself and escape and go hide in that creek back yonder? Or was he just simply a man that was just trying to be resourceful, use what he had to stay dry, keep his health up, so that he could lead another rebellion if he could have made it to Mississippi? Folks, if you ever get the chance to come here and you're ever down in this area, please stop by, visit this area. It is a wonderful, wonderful place, beautiful place, quiet, wonderful place to have a little picnic, and to walk the grounds of history, where America changed, was reunited, whatever, how you want to take that into consideration there. Love this park, always have. Y'all come on by and stop here sometime. As always, folks, like, comment, subscribe, do whatever you want to do. Till next time, y'all take care. Now, have a good one. Bye.